Hello, and welcome to Nerds of the Old Republic, the nerdy podcast where we drink and we know things. I'm Adam.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Mike.
And this week we are talking about a George R.R. Martin IP. I don't know, the world of Westeros is his intellectual property. Incomplete though it may be. So, yeah, no, I'm going there already. Fuck you, George. But if you've never listened to the podcast, we always pair up our media selection with a beverage. We start with that, and then we roll into the media. So you've got a little bit of time if you want to pause here, grab a beverage, unless you're driving. Don't do that if you're driving.
Yeah, it's a bad idea.
Yeah, or at work. I hear they frown upon that.
Yeah.
So just reminding you.
Nerds of the Old Republic does not endorse drinking and driving.
Now drink up, motherfuckers!
That's right. And before we get into anything else, I just want to give a shout out to our friends over at Za Bills. They're kind of like, we're becoming a podcast family.
Yeah, a little bit
here.
Like a brother cast.
Yeah.
Huh.
So, we're watching the Bills game as we speak. So if you hear some like random shouting from us, it's because it's going good or badly. But, whenever I see the Bills, I think of Za Bills. So check them out on wherever you get your podcasts. They've been good to us, and I'd like to make sure that you get to hear them too. So, yeah, right? It is after the holidays. It's good to see you gents again. Thanks for taking time out on Sunday.
Yeah.
Sunday afternoon, we've really hit peak life here.
Yeah.
We can watch the Bills, and we can also talk about some literature and have some beverages. So.
Yeah, I'm kind of down with it.
Not the worst.
Yeah. If only we could be paid for our genius and brilliance, this would be the life.
Well, I think if you could make it a job, then it just isn't the same.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's right. We could be paid, and we have the talent.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, Bill Murray has offered us many, many millions of dollars to take this thing national. We keep saying, nah, we're good.
It's just a hobby. It's just a hobby.
Though, Bill keeps calling me and leaving these weird messages like, hey, I want to be your podcast daddy. And I'm like, Bill, that's not the relationship you promised me when we first started this.
It's a little weird.
Yeah.
Really, the voicemails I get from him are more like, stop calling. Who is this? There's a restraining order being filled out.
That's what I get from Snoop.
He's just got such a sense of humor, Bill. Bill, he's so funny.
Humor.
Nick Cage voicemails are just a bunch of dead air. You hear shuffling in the background. It's weird.
Wait,
stop calling.
Dials you, or he intentionally just trolling you with dead air?
It's Nick Cage, man. You never know.
That's true. Every once in a while, he just shouts, "Get off my piano!"
Yeah. So you found my favorite chair. I knew you wouldn't.
If you don't know what we're referencing, y'all should listen to our Jiu-Jitsu podcast. We live watched a Nicolas Cage Netflix film called Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, that was something.
That was a good day.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good day. Speaking of the good days, let's start this one off well here. I have one of my favorite brown ales because Knight of the Seven Kingdom, poor Dunk the Lunk, keeps referencing how he would just love a nice brown ale. And I get that. So I brought my favorite brown ale to share today. It's from Community Beer Works. Love those people. Coincidentally, I'm also wearing their hat from when they used to have a beer box delivery service. During the pandemic, they would deliver a 4-pack of pints to you, and then a special beer, and then a whole bunch of swag from like local community businesses. It's fantastic.
Well, the pandemic really was a golden age.
Honestly, there are some things I really miss, like not seeing some people.
Yeah, no joking, or all joking aside, there were a few things that were not the worst.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for that, pesky illness that...
Yeah, killing million people.
Other than that.
The resilience of people who endured, I guess there's something to be said for that.
That's right. Yeah, we are the strongest.
Yep.
The herd has been culled.
We're
veering dark early.
Let's stop there because I think we've already stepped our foot.
We didn't read any dystopian fiction we watched some dystopian fiction for our second cast of the day, but we'll get to that later. Sean, do you want to do tasting notes or you want me to?
Well, it's your beer, so your choice.
All right, well, I'll do it only because I happen to love this one.
Excellent.
And I think we all know what's coming. Community Beer Works, The Whale, Brown Ale, 5.9% alcohol by volume, since 2012. The Whale, smooth, drinkable, and packed with legendary notes of coffee, chocolate, and toasted grain. Not on the label, but it'll get you drunk. All right.
Oh, that was great, man.
Thanks.
I love 1920s radio, Adam.
I am literally a one-trick pony.
It's a good trick.
1, 2, 3.
Can we pour these into our vessels?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, dear listeners, you can't see it, but like I have what looks like a fantastic fucking skull in some like silver plate.
Is that
from, like,
pewter?
I picked the most medieval looking drinking vessels I had, and I have another one that's a carved wooden mug, but the handle broke on that recently. So.
I have an ale horn, which I am enjoying
Yes.
quaffing from.
Yes, I left the two most medieval ones to you, and then I've got this. Still feels pretty like I don't know.
I think you should use the horn on the shelf behind you.
Yeah, there is a Viking horn directly behind me, listeners, but I can't set that down once I pour into it. So.
I think that's actually
That's the
a
point.
good. Well, yeah, you keep using it.
Oh yeah, if you want to set it down, you have to chug what's left.
Yeah.
All right, let's taste this.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Ooh, that's very nice.
It's a brown ale.
Yeah. Very toasty. The toasted grain for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, right at the end.
Yeah.
It's thick, but it's not too heavy.
No.
I like
No.
it.
I'm glad to hear it because, 2 years worth of making you drink IPAs. You do a few podcasts.
Don't make me. I get them because I know you guys like them.
What I especially love about this cup, Mike, is because I'm a lefty. Every time I go to drink, I have to
The skull is,
skull
yeah.
vibes.
Well, just pretend that that's a terrible enemy that you defeated in battle.
Yeah.
And now you get to, or maybe he's looking at you, like making you feel bad, like, look what you did, dude.
Well, it depends which enemy this is.
After Adam absorbed his life force through the quickening
Yes.
and, secluded it into the mug.
Of course. Yes.
It took us all 2 days to do that. And then that's after the week it took to dry the skull. You don't understand how hard it is to get skin off of a skull.
Oh, man.
But
believe
that's
me, I know.
serious craftsmanship right there, Adam. Nicely done.
Yeah.
Flaying the skin off the skull.
The
Dreadfort.
The pewter also took me about a month because, I'm shit with pewter, but
Yeah.
whatever.
Well,
Shit with pewter. Things you thought you'd never say. I didn't have that on my bingo card.
Yeah. We honestly
great.
should have a bingo card. We should have a bingo game for listeners. Here's a PDF downloadable. Anytime one of these, like, this has happened throughout the podcast, like, just
Well.
kind of standard, you can expect it here or there.
Yeah.
See if it happens today.
I'll work on that in all the spare time I have.
some dude's been listening to us for 3 years and he's like, I finally got shit with pewter.
I got it.
Bingo.
What's my thing? Honestly, if we did that and somebody was like so dedicated
Send you a
to sticking
sticker.
on bingo, I don't know what I would send them, but I'd send them something. That's for sure.
Unlimited free downloads of our podcast.
Oh, that.
Unlimited
yeah.
power. Well, jumping back to the medieval IP we've got here. So George R.R. Martin, if you're unaware, is the writer of the entire Westeros world, including the Game of Thrones that was on HBO,
Yep.
still unfinished. He's going to die with it unfinished.
You take that out of your mouth. He's going to finish it, and it's going to be glorious.
Sure. He's going to finish it, and then he's going to print it out, and the file will be deleted. He'll be on a train, and someone will open the window, and the paper will go out into the world.
A la Hemingway.
Exactly. But what you guys have a deeper experience with George R.R. Martin than I have. Do you guys want to run through like what you've read or your thoughts about him as a writer in the first place? I know I joke about him not finishing stuff, but
Yeah, I'll go first because Sean will have more to say. I fucking hated it. Song of Ice and Fire. I despised it. I thought the first book was great. I thought the second and third were drastically going downhill. The fourth, I forced myself to finish. And the fifth one, I quit halfway through and threw the book across the room.
Damn.
Yeah.
yeah. So
Wow.
did you watch the HBO series then?
No, I have heard from a lot of people that the show is, while true to the, I'm just quoting what I've heard, while true to the books, also it's very much its own entity and a spectacle enough that you could hate the books and still like the TV show. However, I'm notoriously bad at watching TV and I still have it on my to watch list. So maybe 10 or 15 years down the road, I'll get to it.
Mike's had this look of like, come at me, bro, as he's like telling me he fucking hated it because he knows that I'm a friggin' Martin stan.
And it's usually the other way around,
Yeah,
right? Like you usually get to,
You're the hater.
to just rip people's like, hearts out and hold them still beating in your hand while you talk about how much you hate the shit they love.
I definitely go full. What the hell was that guy's name?
Oh, I don't know. The priest?
Yeah, that
That's all
guy.
I was going to call him.
Yeah,
The priest. I think that's his credit in the movie.
I expect it is fully worthy. I get it, but I am a huge Martin fan, and this goes back to God. I was on my way somewhere in the world, and we had a stopover at a hotel, and I was just turned on HBO because I didn't have it at home. And there's this medieval show on, and I'm like, "The fuck is this? This is awesome!" And I'm watching it, I'm like, wow, this is really, it was like an episode where, you know, somebody was brutally killed and there was probably some kind of, you know,
rape almost
sex scene or whatever. And I was like, I've never seen anything like this. Yeah, exactly. So I found out it was Game of Thrones and I saw like, oh, this is actually blowing up. Everyone's into this. And I found out, oh, it's a book series. Oh, there's a lot of books. So my wife was, I think at the time, a couple of months pregnant when I discovered it. And I just devoured the entire saga up to this point within the time of her being like 2 months pregnant to giving birth. I just finished everything because I couldn't put it down. And I feel bad because there was probably moments where she needed my help with things. And I was like, yeah, right, just a minute, honey. And the next thing I know, 3 hours have gone by and I'm like, what happened? And she's asleep. And I'm like, you know, I'm barely into the book. I love it. I love the world. I think the history and the world building and the things he's built into the story are even greater than the stories themselves. Unlike Mike, I really did enjoy all of the saga books so far, or the song books. I even Feast for Crows and Dance of Dragons. They're long and bloated, but I still like where the story is developing. I know it's hard for Martin to finish this because it's so unwieldy now, and the TV show ending early probably changed a lot of what he was going to do based on the critical reception it got. But I love it. I love the world of Westeros and Esteros and all the stuff that's in it. I think it's incredible, an achievement for any writer to have developed such a wealthy history and lineages of all these families and this world. It's so, the complexity is mind-boggling. So for that achievement alone, I am just a huge fan.
So my history with the world of Westeros actually is that my wife's cousins told us, oh, you should watch this series, and we didn't have HBO or whatever. So we, you know, I think we paid for the streaming service for a little bit, or however we got it. We watched the first episode, which is notorious for the incest and then the attempted killing of Bran off the tower. And like immediately that turned my wife off, and I was kind of like, whatever, sure. And then they came over the next year because they live in North Carolina. So, you know, we talked to them, but they would always like hype up the show while they were with us. So we're like, okay, fine, we'll give it another go. And I think we watched 2 episodes that time, and it was probably 2 episodes of the first season, but they were already on like season 2 at that point. And by the third try, we had like just started binging everything, and then we were waiting for the seasons to come out. I have not read the books, but I did read the coffee table book that Sean lent me years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Like the entire history of the world of Westeros. So like I knew a lot of the Targaryen names in the past because of that book.
The World of Ice and Fire.
Yeah, The World of Ice and Fire, which is a gorgeous book.
It is.
And it was written by Martin's team,
right,
not by him, which is probably why it was complete. Now I'm just going, I gotta stop that. But I mean, it was gorgeously illustrated and like helped me, because I always struggle with the high fantasy when there's like 1,000 characters.
Yeah.
Or there's like 7 characters, but then there's 15 lineages you have to keep track of those 7 characters. And then, you know, the titles and stuff get super long. So like even reading Night of the Seven Kingdoms, we get into that a little bit with the Targaryens and everything. So sometimes my eyes glaze over a little bit, but I loved the TV series. I was not upset with the ending as many people were. I kind of saw it as inevitable. Like, you know,
Thanos-like.
Yeah, Thanos-like. It's just got to happen.
Yeah.
And my only claim to fame with the series is that when we were in Scotland two summers ago, we drove past the tower on a tour.
Oh, cool.
Where they tried to kill Bran.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, it's in between Edinburgh and Loch Ness. That's all I can tell you.
Okay.
Because I was not driving. Someone else was driving the tour van.
There's got to be some kind of European Game of Thrones tour that you can take where they'll just take you around all like Croatia and all the places where they filmed all those beautiful scenes. It's incredible.
I'd be really surprised if there wasn't.
There's got to be. There's the Lord of the Rings tours of New Zealand, right? There's got to be.
Oh, yeah.
Game
which is like high up on my list. I've already got my family signed up to go see, you know, Mount Mordor and everything.
Oh,
and have they not like actually physically rebuilt the Shire? I feel like I read this somewhere, so that it's now like a permanent tourist location.
I'm pretty sure that it was always, they never took it down.
Oh, was that? Okay. I got you.
I think there was probably the intention to do The Hobbit at some point. I think that Jackson had always envisioned it, not a free piece like monstrosity that it became, but I think he wanted to maybe leave the door open. So I don't think the Shire was ever disassembled.
Yeah.
There's a lot of craftsmanship in that. Like if you guys look at it, it's not just some sets.
Yeah,
Like they
they're not
really
fun.
built a lot of that. So
Super quick side note. Speaking of The Hobbit, I was at a wedding recently and sitting at a table for dinner, and someone that I know very well and is a member of the family and I love and respect, but they made the comment very casually that the Hobbit trilogy was so much better than Lord of the Rings.
you can tell a lot about a person's taste.
I
Ripped your
had to be physically restrained.
That's
shouted for Aragon.
wow.
Ready to gank him.
Oh
Wow.
I had to be physically restrained.
That's again, you can tell a lot about someone's taste and their ability to truly judge media with a take like
With
that.
a comment like that,
You
exactly.
can dismiss them immediately
I mean,
from anything in your life.
so I obviously didn't
You
have
should cut out that entire wing of your family.
I didn't. I mean, I'm obviously joking about being physically restrained, but I am not joking when I say like I did not speak for a moment because I did not trust myself to not. I mean, it was not a crowd that would have been very receptive to a deep Tolkien conversation, so I just let it pass.
Not many are. This is probably it.
Sure.
Yeah, it's just
I don't
so
know.
sad.
My younger son's gotten into it more,
Right.
and he'll make in fact, he called his feet hobbit feet the other day.
Nice.
He's like, but they're not as hairy. They're just really big. Every once in a while, I call him Gollum. Make a
Oh,
precious
jeez.
joke.
That's
It's
great.
good that he recognizes that in his feet.
Yeah, and he likes to stay home, and actually, he loves second breakfasts, threesies, and stuff. So he's a hobbit at heart.
Just keep him away from the pipe weed, and he'll be all right.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough now that that's legal in New York.
Yeah.
Being younger, I feel like I've got a little time.
How is it that every Martin conversation always goes back to Tolkien?
I can't
Because
think
I
of any
swear that's the
connections.
source material.
It's almost like he was inspired.
Yeah,
Weird. Well, we should probably get to
Yeah.
Dunk the Lunk and the Knight of the Seven Kingdoms.
Yep.
So, Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is a collection of 3 stories. Not quite. I guess they're short stories.
Yeah,
They're
they're
not
like
quite
novellas.
novellas. Yeah,
The Duncan Egg stories.
Yep,
There's supposed to be
Duncan Egg.
more coming too. Well,
I would read more.
once he finishes, A Song of Ice
No,
and Fire.
he's going to write the Dunk stories and then try to go back to that series. But in any case, so we start off finding out about this hedge knight, which
Mhm.
is, basically a knight for hire. Sir Duncan the Tall, he calls himself at the
Yeah.
tournament. And we get 3 stories after that, and he ends up having, one of the Targaryen king lineage with him, Aegon. What's his moniker?
Aegon the Unlikely.
The Unlikely. There we go.
Aegon 5, the Unlikely.
5. Okay, I was going to say, I get all the Aegons.
I think he's 5. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's 5. Because 4 was like a real womanizer, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to get out my history of the Targaryens in order to
See, and
get it accurate, but
And I will. We could talk about each of the stories on their own merits, starting with that sick jousting tournament and that whole conversation. But that is my only slight against the whole book. I'm just going to lay it out there. So many names, as you get with most high fantasy, anyways.
what's interesting is, if I may, Martin developed, thousands of years of history of this what's the name of the planet? Planetos, or whatever people call it now, like Esteros and Westeros and all of this. And the minutia of detail that he goes into with all of the houses and their castles and their vassals and their offspring and their bastard children and their legitimate children and
The bastards who were legitimized.
oh my God, he based a lot of this on the War of the Roses. You can see where there was a lot of real history that he drew from, but nonetheless, the level of detail that he could take these pretty rich stories that he built with the Duncan Egg series,
Mhm.
and that was just one cross section of all the history. Like the what's the show that's out now that they're doing?
House of the Dragon.
House of the Dragon is based on events that happened 100 so years before Duncan Egg. So it's incredible that he's got all these epochs of time, and you can tell such rich stories in there because of the skeletal framework that he had to have taken years of his life to develop this world.
Yeah.
And just that idea that it's one little slice, one Targaryen, he's like a 4th son of a 4th son. He's got no claim to the throne, but he does become the king, which is part of the story. But that gets he wants to be the squire for some hedge knight, which they call sellswords, and all the other Game of Thrones stuff. It's like, well, he kind of
I didn't even realize that.
it's interesting how
Read
Martin,
the books.
he treats these books much more chivalrously than he does his other tales, which are way more dark and real. These ones almost have that Tolkien-esque Green Knight kind of like, oh, it's all about high chivalry and being a good person and doing the right thing, even though you could easily do the wrong thing. And even the tone of the story changes where he calls him a hedge knight instead of a sellsword. You know, it's like little subtle differences that change it tonally from the main series.
That was something, I mean, you mentioned the similarity or the inspiration of Tolkien before, and that was something that was so brilliant about Tolkien is like every person, every character, every place, every event had like 9 different names and perspectives on it because he put that level of detail into like developing, you know, like Gandalf, he has like 9 different names, right? Like depending on who's addressing
thousands of
him.
years of history.
Right. Yeah. So you know, when I talk about my dislike of the series of Song of Ice and Fire, it is not the world building that I dislike at all. I love good world building and he's a master of that. And I'll just get in one more quick point here before I throw it back over to you. But I wanted to jump off of a point you made about this book being less dark and more chivalrous. And that is what I want to throw in at this point, that I loved this book. I found this delightful storytelling. And most of the reasons I loved it have to do with all the things that they aren't, that Song of Ice and Fire had become.
I get that.
I hated and resented.
Yeah.
It'll be hard for me to talk about why I liked this book without veering into that. Like, this is what I hated about Song of Ice and Fire so much. But at the most simplistic level, this book was basically, it was an old fashioned, like Don Quixote-esque, not, I mean, in the style, not in the character is a different character, but
the wandering knight.
And it was just about his adventures as a knight.
Yeah.
And it was very focused on the plot, which is something that he lost by about book 3 in Song of Ice and Fire. He lost the story. And this was so tightly bound in story and immediate conflicts that needed immediate resolutions that I found it a page turner. It was very compelling.
There's a lot, and I think this is the time and place for you to bring up your gripes because that does color the conversation. But I think there's a lot to be said for he knows where this story ends.
I was going to say the same thing. The series of short stories and Duncan's, you know.
He knows exactly what happens to them.
Right.
He's already talked about the Summer Hall incident and all that stuff that he alludes to in these books. He's already mapped that whole thing out. It's a Song of Ice and Fire that I don't think he had it complete, or it changed, or something in the process of developing the actual narrative has changed for him where it's making it very difficult for him to get through it. Whereas this, I think it's just easy because he knows, oh, eventually they're going to get to this point. Oh, and eventually they're going to get to this point. I'll tell a story about this little misadventure they had that led to some other revelation or whatever. And it's much easier when you know where you got to go.
It's that sort of White Stripes philosophy of like less allows you to do more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like working backwards, the whole Song of Fire and Ice is like the world building and everything. The world's already built. He doesn't have to do that here. You know, someone who is reading this book probably isn't walking into Westeros for the first time.
Right. And there's no TV show dictating people's expectations.
Yeah.
Now that he has to play with because, well, there will be. I think within a year or so, there's going to be a Dunk and Egg series coming out, which I can't believe he's letting this happen. But there was
a terrible movie.
I very much wondered how they're going to approach that. Are they going to keep the tone of the book, or are they going to deliver on probably fan expectations and make it more in line with like what the TV show was? And
there better be a hot and passionate Tansel Too Tall moment, because if there isn't, then I think Dunk gets misused. Poor guy.
No, I want to see him misused in the Tansel Too Tall moment. I'd be really surprised if HBO changed the tone. I mean, they didn't with House of the Dragon, right? Like, I've seen clips. I haven't even seen an episode of it. I'm just waiting for the whole thing to be done so I can binge it.
It's much less salacious, I think, than Game of Thrones was at times. It still has, plenty of, intrigue and things that you want to see in a Game of Thrones property, but they tone down the incest and the rape a lot. I mean, it's still incestuous because she marries her uncle and all this stuff. Yeah. And that part of it is a Targaryen thing that even in world, they talk about how weird it is, but
Dunk does that a little bit.
Yes.
Talking about Egg and whole families.
And how he's probably have to marry his sister or whatever. And it's just weird, right? That's how they are.
Like Egg finds a weird way to like back out of that conversation.
Right. Yeah. Almost like defensively.
Yeah. Sure. Defensively. He's also a kid.
Yeah, it's true. But he's precocious for a kid too, which is part of his charm. But I don't know where the hell I was going with this. Fuck. I had an onion tied to my belt, which is the style at the time. Yeah, I lost my thread there. But the TV show, I don't think they'll have to change the tone because I think it's its own tone. It's its own thing. And I don't think just because it's on HBO necessarily means that they can't just do it. Like HBO also had Sesame Street for a while. Like, not to compare the two.
Right.
There's still a lot of violence. There's still a lot of stuff happening in this that people want to see.
So very dark.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because I'm thinking, I guess I'm thinking to go back to, especially that Quentin Tarantino Sesame Street. That was fucking
Oh, my God. Oh, okay.
Elmo's going to pop a cap in your ass.
No, I'm good.
Big the kind of bitch.
What does Snuffleupagus look like? Does he look like a bitch? But to go back to, again, the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit whole thing, the tone of the Hobbit movies was in the tone of the Lord of the Rings movies and not in the tone of the Hobbit book. So that's what I was curious about with this book is, will they keep the tone of this book, which is more of like a adventurous, chivalrous knight story, or will they be like, we're going to try to make it of a piece with Game of Thrones because that's where most of the audience will be coming from?
I think if they pick a different director, then they could have all the reason in the world they want to change the tone and match the book. But
I hope they will. I hope they will keep the tone of the book and not just try to do Game of Thrones part 3 or whatever.
More than like a Disney or something else, I trust HBO to make good decisions with their tentpole properties. It's rare that an HBO show completely flops.
Right.
Maybe I'm just missing something, but I just feel like they are a little bit more on point with making sure something's going to land with their target audience. Yeah, the quality control is better.
So we want to go through that and talk about the Hedge Knight, the first story. That is, we kind of did like a big overview. Maybe we kind of zoom in just for a little bit.
That's
someone's interested.
The tournament, right?
That's the first tournament before he's got a squire. You find out about Dunk and Sir Arlen of the Penny Tree, right?
Sir Arlen of Penny Tree, yeah.
Penny Tree.
Yep.
And I kind of like, you see one of these characters trying to make themselves.
Yeah.
Which is not what you got in Game of Thrones. Everyone was already titled and named for a lot. Again, just the TV series, not the book series. So I appreciated that.
I had no idea what to expect coming into this. And I came into it with very low expectations because, as I said, like as Song of Ice and Fire went on, my disappointment had grown into disdain. And I was like, whatever, I'm going to read the book and the cast had agreed to do it. So I was going to obviously read the book, but I had low expectations. I just, for me personally, I didn't expect to like it. And right off the bat, within a few pages, I'm like, this just feels different. Like it doesn't feel like sensationalist, which is how I felt Song of Ice and Fire had become. I felt like there was real attention being paid to character development rather than character destruction, which is another beef I have with that series.
I was waiting for like to shoot a drop and for both Egg and Dunk to be killed.
Like, oh, you like Dunk? We're just gonna kill him brutally, and Egg's gonna get raped, and like,
yeah, honestly, that would not have surprised me if that happened.
No,
so,
okay.
Wait. But to be fair, there are some unexpected, like big time deaths, like
in the first tournament,
like Baelor Breakspear,
right? He takes right at the end, and his head falls apart. Yeah,
which was handled in a way like that it wasn't so salacious.
Right.
Like,
it was sensitively done.
And I don't have a problem with that stuff. In fact, I told you I loved the first book in the Song of Ice and Fire series, and I remember when they killed. This was before the whole series had like really blown up, and so this was early enough that I had no idea what was going to happen to Ned Stark. That truly was a shocking surprise to me.
I'm with you on that, yeah.
And I loved it. I thought like, wow, that is so bold. That'd be like killing Frodo Baggins, right?
Yeah.
It was fucking so unexpected. I thought it was so bold. I thought it was great. But I think now I'm going into the rant I was trying to not go into. But like,
it was going to happen. It's all right.
I think what happened with Song of Ice and Fire is that the author took all the wrong lessons from the first book. He was like, oh, people love the sex scenes. People love not just the sex scenes, but they love like there was like so much like nasty incest and rape and like people pissing in the woods. We can't just describe them walking in the woods. We have to describe them like pissing in the woods over and over and over again, as they do with the one Stark girl who's wandering in the woods for like an entire book. I don't even remember the names, to be honest with you. But I feel like people were like this, they praised certain things about that book because they were like, well, that was refreshing for fantasy at the time. And so the author lost track of what the story was and what was valuable about the characters and decided, I'm just going to keep bashing people over the head with this stuff. I'm just going to keep killing characters that they like or changing characters that they like, but not for the better in ways that make them less interesting characters. We're just going to keep having sex, but awful sex. It's going to be like rape or incest or
awful sex.
Yeah, exactly. Just the worst sex. And that's all that book became. And by the time you get to the fourth or fifth book in the series, it becomes a whole different cast of characters. You're not even sure what they're doing anymore. And it's just like, here we go. Here's someone's getting raped again. Like that's what it had all become. Anyways, I wasn't trying to talk about all that. I was trying to say with this book, I'm not opposed to the unexpected death. And I didn't see that. What was that character's name when takes the helmet off and Baylor? Like, I mean, that totally surprised me. I was like, oh, this is how Dunk like ascends, right? Like, cause the guy said something like, I need good nights, right? Like, and I was like, oh, so this makes sense. This is his ascension. He's going to become this guy's like right-hand man and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, what? Like something didn't look right. And like he took the helmet off and he was faint and they noticed. That was great. That was so well done. And
brother too.
Right.
Yeah.
Messed up.
That was a cool moment because he didn't have to fight in that fight, right? Yeah. But he was the honorable guy and he was going to do the honorable thing. And
so it still does what Martin, like you're saying, Martin, he took like the subverting of your expectations and he went too far with it.
Yes. Right? It's almost Ryan Johnson-esque. No, yeah.
I get that. But at the same time, that's part of what makes this story so great is you expect, the good and honorable prince is going to be fine. He's going to do the honorable thing. It's going to prove that Dunk is innocent and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, it does, but not without a cost, right? The monkey's paw curled and it's like, the guy died and now the brother is like in disgrace and he hates himself because he killed his good brother and all this stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like that morally gray thing that Martin nails. And I get your criticisms. And I felt a lot of that same thing when I first read the last two books in the series. I thought the first three were incredible and I flew through them. The last two get to be kind of a slog because he sort of begins to meander and just sort of like a boat stuck without a wave or without a wind. It's just sort of like, what are we doing here? Why are we doing this? Why are you're developed the characters enough. Make them do something now.
Right.
And I feel like part of it is he's sort of where was I going with that? Damn it! I'm like Martin.
Moral gray zone.
Yeah,
all the like.
He's really good at it. I read it again. I read the last book again in anticipation, thinking that Winds of Winter might be coming out soon. Boy, what an idiot I was! And honestly, on a second read, I feel a lot better about those last couple of books than I did before because I feel like a lot of it is again developing these characters for some sort of denouement that's coming. I don't see it the same way you did, but I understand where that opinion comes from. I totally get it. But I mean, if you're ever bored one day and you're like, oh, what the fuck?
I mean, I have wondered.
You got 97 hours to kill.
Because I've had the experience many times of you don't like something the first time and it's because it's not what you expected it to be. And you go back and look at it a second time expecting it to be that. And like it much better.
Right.
So I have been curious if I were to revisit the series knowing some of the direction some of this stuff goes in, would I appreciate it more? And I'm sure I would. I mean, a lot of my disdain the first time was like, he just keeps fucking his own story up.
Yeah.
And I stayed with him for so many books. Like, okay, all right, Jaime Lannister, badass sword fighter. Maybe there's going to be some kind of, oh no, he lost his hand. And now we're going to follow him for like several books as like he doesn't sword fight, but just tries to like still be something in the Lannister family.
But I love that complexity. This guy who was irredeemably bad, who's trying to find himself.
To me, that's not complexity when that's all you do with your story and your characters. There's like Theon Greyjoy, like maybe he's going to be like, I'm going back here, so you can tell me if I'm remembering things wrong. But he was going to be like some kind of interesting like Viking character from the sea, and then like he got thrown in a dungeon and like turned into this like creep. And I'm like, literally, I'm looking for any kind of character that I can be like, all right, this character, I like this character, and he just keeps fucking him up or killing him. Like
what about John?
what doesn't he die? Like,
Yeah, but up until that point,
and then does he come back? I feel like I've heard things.
we don't know yet. In the books, it hasn't gotten that far.
Okay, I gotcha. I'm like, I don't know. Some of the stuff just started. I could almost see the author sitting at his keyboard, being like, "Nobody's going to expect this," and it's like it had become the thing you expect. Like another one would be Tyrion. Is that how you say the name? Tyrion. Like he was such a fascinating character. And then all of a sudden he like fell out of favor with the Lannisters and he ended up on a boat saying like, where do whores go? And like, that's all that happened for like 1,000 pages. And I'm like, that's another character ruined.
Okay. Now,
and that's why I won't read the books. The TV series does it fine.
But to give,
he comes back
to push back a little bit.
One more I want to throw in here.
Go ahead.
What's her name? The Targaryen. Targaryen. But what's her name in there? Yes. Yeah.
Dragon Queen.
She was super cool for like a couple books. And then she finally arrives and it's like thousands of pages of her like, I'm so tired of what leadership actually involves. And I don't want to, and it's like, it's, do something with the character. I don't want her to like be it's like the trade disputes in Phantom Menace.
It's a valid criticism. I get that. But I also feel like a lot of, especially modern fantasy and sci-fi storytelling ignores the fact that it takes time for things to happen. And Martin, I don't think, is shy about sticking with the fact that it takes Tyrion a long time to get across Essos to find Daenerys. It takes
He literally
time.
makes it real lifetime, though.
Well,
I'm going to say that.
It's not that bad. On second read, it really wasn't that bad. But it takes Daenerys a long time to learn, like, hey, you can't trust people. People are shit.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, he's developing these characters, and yeah, it's a slog to get there. And I get a lot of it is probably him just, like, trying to find some way through for these characters, too.
But like Arya pissing in the woods is like the first through 10th time that happens, you're like, well, yeah, like she would have to piss in the woods. Like there's not going to be plumbing out there in the forest. I get it.
Well, I think that's his answer.
But then by like the 11th or 12th times, and what was the phrase he kept using? It was like, make water. I'm like, come on, dude.
That's
like
such a weird southern
but that's his way of like saying, like, oh, you expect in Tolkien, no one ever uses the bathroom. Well, I'm going to make them use the bathroom. So you're going to know it.
But that's exactly what I didn't like is that whole thing. I can literally see him grinning to himself. Like, yeah, this is so like real life.
See, I overlook a lot of that stuff because for me, it's more about the overarching thing that I like a lot. The minutia of it sometimes bogs down, but I try not to get trapped by it. But, to each their own. Your use may vary.
What happened for me, I'll readily admit this, is I got to a point in the series where I was so frustrated with it that, it's not unlike watching the Buffalo Sabres nowadays where there was nothing I was willing to forgive. Like my frustration had become so deep that it was like Arya's pissing again. Like, you know what I mean? It was like, fuck.
Jack Quinn is fucking up.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, I'll admit, like I was focused on the minutia because I was so annoyed. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I get it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like when, you're in a bad mood. So everything just wrecks you.
Right.
You pick like the
caught me at a bad time. Yeah.
But you take all those criticisms and you look at like the Hedge Knight, you've got a lot of the same narrative moves, but it's a much more tight focus. Mm-hmm. And you've got like the unexpected character death. You've got the morally ambiguous ending. You've got he gets the girl. No, he doesn't. She's gone.
Yeah. Right.
You've got a lot of those identity in a.
Yes. So there's a lot of that stuff that he puts in, but it's a lot more of a quick, like, let's just get it going kind of thing. And
I think you're exactly right. And because I was thinking about that I think it was the second book where he goes to
Sworn Sword. Oh, sorry. You're talking second story in.
Yes. The second story.
Yeah.
And what's
Checky Water?
Sworn Sword. Oh my God. If I see Checky Water one more fucking time.
My Checky Water.
Say Checky Water one more fucking time.
Checky in a country I ever heard of.
But they want to he wants to demonstrate the length and the arduousness of the journey. And so he works in the whole thing about like, well, I can't wear my finery or else it'll be all sweaty and disgusting when I get there. And that would be disgraceful. And they're like, well, just change when you get there. And he's like, how silly would that look on the drawbridge? So like, then, I mean, like to me, that was a great way of showing like, okay, yeah, like, this isn't like you could just call an Uber and pop over there. You have to actually undertake the journey during a drought when it's hot. And these are some of the, you know what I mean? And it didn't need to be them stopping 100 times to piss in the woods or to stop at, try not to be raped or to rape, along the way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so and I think this is to the point you're making about like it took what he does well, but because of the tighter constraint for me as a reader, it worked better. Like I stopped getting I wasn't annoyed at all with this. I found this absolutely delightful.
It's a smaller
Same
story.
here.
Yeah.
And, you know, the Sworn Sword does the political intrigue on a much smaller scale. You know, Dunk gets tricked. He gets lied to by the landed nobility that he's serving. He's not a king or anything like that.
Eustace or
Sir Useless.
Sir Useless.
You know, and so I thought that was good. Like, okay, so here's the political intrigue back and forth. He's serving this guy, gets played by the guy because the Sir Eustace knowingly sends him over, knowing that Sir Eustace fought for the bastard king or which dragon was it?
The Black Dragon. He definitely works. He definitely works in that rebellion, like which is another part of his deep history. With you know the bastard son who gets legitimized and he gets the sword and all this. It's like
the War of the Roses.
Yeah, essentially.
I thought
that in beautifully.
I thought it was all so well handled in this book because that another criticism I had of Song of Ice and Fire is that you get to a certain point in that series where you're like they're all just creeps, like they're all awful, they're all motivated by selfish things, and there's really nothing to like. Granted, I like my gray literature, I like my complex literature, but that's different than I felt like Song of Ice and Fire had just become like sleazy literature, like the world's full of bad people who are all motivated by bad things, and in this book. He has a much more nuanced look at that. Like the part you guys are talking about is like, you know, you're completely understanding of Eustace's side till you talk to the lady,
the Red Widow,
right? And then you're like, oh shit, like this is a whole different perspective. And then he goes back and you hear Eustace's side again with some new details. And you're like, oh my, like they both kind of have valid points here. Like I thought neither of them came off as like good, like shiningly, like very moral characters, but neither of them came across as like sleazy. These are dirtbags who just want power characters either. They're both real. Came across as real people.
And another thing I liked about that story is the fight in the water.
Yeah.
Between the two knights. Like that was a gritty ass fight.
Yeah,
don't drown the guy.
Yes.
I love that
he stabbed him while drowning him. That was cool.
A couple of high watermarks for me, and no pun intended. But a couple of things in that story that I love was the development of the Red Widow. I can't think of her name, but she sews a guy into a sack and then like she's got this like edgy backstory.
Right.
Every municipality has their own way of murdering traitors.
Yeah.
And then you find out, no, she's this hot little redhead that she's only a couple years older than Dunk, and you know she kind of wants to get with him, and it's like, oh, but she edges him, and he's too good to take advantage of a lady. But
and she's doing all the cruel stuff that she does because her position is very tenuous.
Yes, she's in that. Again, Martin does a really deft job of maneuvering a woman's like role in this world, especially one that has power, quote unquote power, where she's like hemmed in by her father's like will and this knight who wants basically to force her in a certain way, and just the way that they're able to rid themselves of all of that. And it's kind of gross in the end when she marries a 60-plus-year-old dude who was
she had to marry anyway.
Yeah, she had to.
I get it.
But I thought that was such a great twist, too.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I
think like George R.R. Martin had started to annoy me with his twists, but this one I thought was great. Like when he wakes up and they're like, oh, the wedding. And I'm like, the wedding. And I'm like, because I kind of expected like Dunk was gonna end. It was just like the same fake out from the first story.
Yeah.
Like he's gonna become the honorable knight's like right hand man, and this one is like he's gonna end up with this girl. I'm like, and then it was like, oh no, Eustace of all fucking people, she marries Sir Useless. You know, like
the guy she was going to kill.
And when she explains it, it makes sense. And she tells Dunk like, doesn't she say grow up or something like that to him? Like
basically like this is the way it is.
Right. I was like, dude, that shit was great. I thought that was.
But
brilliant.
then they also had that great moment, like in the stable where she's trying to give him the horse.
Right.
Yeah.
And he like just pulls her hair down, like, and then sort of like rough, smutty kind of way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, let's.
And he,
no, you're not going to give.
And he doesn't rape her, which is.
She was a willing participant.
That's true. It might not have been.
I was not looking for rape. I was looking for consensual.
I think she was definitely.
She was DTF.
Oh, she was one of the people. She was one of the several people in this book who said, like, I bet you're big everywhere, aren't you?
What I like about the story too is the mirroring between Dunk and the bad knight that she had in her sword. I can't think of the guy's name.
Bennis was
something along. I don't know.
Long Inch.
The Long inch. Oh my God.
Come on now.
Yeah, but the fact that he's only an inch or so shorter than Dunk, who's like 7 feet tall. Like Martin's got this obsession with like basketball player sized guys. But
honestly, he's an inch less than 7 feet.
Right.
According to Dunk.
And Martin himself looks like a hobbit.
It's just like wish fulfillment. But but Duncan, Duncan, this guy are like going toe to toe in that battle in the river or the pond or whatever the hell it was, or whatever it was, creek. And just the fact that he just barely beats the guy.
Right.
That's that awesome like parallelism between those, like he could have been something like this, but he's the honorable hedge knight. It's a rarity in that world. And it's great.
He is also, he's not someone who comes across, he comes across as like smart in a very like, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like sort of blue collarish, like earthy kind of way, but not like in a worldly way, but he
smart
otherwise
stupid.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
He's always just like, he never outwits anybody. He never has any grand strategy. He's not a schemer. He's not like,
but just trying to do good is what gets him through.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Contrast him with Bennis the Brown. Like who's like what he could also wind up being like, it's like the same, like all these like, oh, you could be like this, you could be like this, you could be like this. And it's like, how does he wind up being Lord Commander of the Kingsguard? Eventually that's him.
Yeah.
And like basically saving the Targaryen dynasty from utter disaster. If you guys look at the history of what happens afterwards.
So that was a question I was going to have, is it's been so long since I read Song of Ice and Fire, is I imagine there's a lot that I've forgotten that there was probably like in this book, is mentioned or alluded to.
Tyrion alludes a few times.
Yeah.
King Aegon V there, who tries to bring dragons back at Summerhall, and the experiment goes completely wrong and burns the castle down.
Shut up, yeah.
And Dunk, or Sir Duncan the Tall, saves the child of Aegon so that the dynasty continues. But there's a tragedy, like they all died and he died in the attempt and all this, but he saved the baby.
Gets cooked in his armor.
Or something really horrible.
Yeah.
And there's also the idea that, and I think it's been confirmed by Martin, that Duncan is a somehow like great grandfather or whatever to Brienne of Tarth. So he's got like
that
a connection there.
Sense, of course.
Super honorable, wants to do the right thing all the time. Big and tall. Yeah. And I think people try to link him with the mountain, but there's no connection. Like they're not. Not
I kept waiting for, even in the first tournament, for someone to be like the mountain later on. Or
I think that's the Long Inch, is basically that same kind of idea, like this like unstoppable huge guy.
Well, I was thinking like who becomes the mountain? Is it the Hound? Which one gets
the Hound? Is Sandor? He's the good one.
Okay, so it's the mountain that turns into a zombie. They turn him into a zombie.
Yeah, he becomes Sir Gregor the Tall or whatever,
Sir Gregor
Stone or whatever they may like it.
Yeah. I feel like this is a good place to wrap up, actually, because we've talked about where the book is, where the book leads into the whole world of Westeros.
And the third story is a lot of political intrigue. It's another tournament, and Dunk finds himself stuck in this like War of the Roses-esque kind of like usurpation thing. It's good. The whole thing is worth a read if you are interested in this kind of stuff, for sure.
And I agree too. Like I would absolutely recommend this book, maybe as the starter into the series, but knowing that I haven't read the whole Song of Ice and Fire.
I mean, I'll say again, like it's stunning to me what this book was, because it is, even as there are so many things that we've talked about where we're like, oh yeah, this is Martin does this, Martin does this in Song of Ice and Fire. So many similarities. Just the tone. The tone is so completely different from Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah,
it is utterly like defied my expectations of what this book was going to be. It completely like restored my interest in this world. And
saying a lot considering
where I was. Yes. And I don't know if they're already out or not, but I feel at the end of my book, it says like, this is not the last Duncan Egg story.
So,
like,
as far as I know, he has not written anymore, but
so maybe in the next 30 years, like then
Martin doesn't have respectfully 30 years left.
Right.
My hope is that Martin doesn't leave everything with this sort of like, well, that's it. I'm dead. You're all fucked. You'll never get closure. I at least like, let the property live on with ghostwriters like Dune, kind of like the same kind of thing. I would love to see more, at least with competent writers in this world, because it's such a beautiful world. It'd be a shame for it to all just go.
They finished Wheel of Time with Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah, that's another one.
Yeah, I was actually going to say it'd be good for Sanderson to pick up the IP if George R.R. Martin wanted to just.
They'd have to get someone grittier. I feel like Sanderson is definitely like the old school. Yeah, Dean Koontz. Oh, I was thinking of who's the guy? I don't have it up here because I never finished the book. But fuck, there's a
N.K. Jemisin. She could totally do.
Oh yeah,
oh yeah,
the Westeros.
I was going to say the banner we became, but sure.
Could you imagine? Did you guys ever see that video of Martin and King talking on stage?
No, but that sounds.
Oh, it's incredible. Martin asks him. He just goes point blank, "How do you write so much?" And King laughs.
I just do it.
Yeah, he's like, "Well, he didn't really answer him." It's really worth a watch.
They're two completely different writers.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, King is very much like, how do I keep you turning the page? Mm-hmm. And he's not really terribly worried about depth or complexity or prose. Whereas Martin doesn't give a fuck at all if you turn the page, but he's super interested in all those other things. Mm-hmm. But they're both great in their own way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And speaking of opposites, if you're interested in sticking with us, our next cast, we're going to start in a couple minutes, and we'll share in the next couple weeks, is Ghost in the Shell. So we're going from high fantasy to cyberpunk because we don't like to do middle ground.
This is a hard shift.
Yes.
Well, this actually also came from, I think, my suggestion of doing Cowboy Bebop. We realized we didn't have time to watch 26 episodes or 13 hours of TV then. So Sean, I think, suggested Ghost in the Shell.
Oh, God.
Off of that.
Don't put that on me.
All right, I'll take Ghost in the Shell.
So I can already see we're going to be returning to our... Yeah. So listeners, we are... If you were thrown by this episode with me in the role of hater and Sean as enthusiast, fear not. It sounds like the world is returning. Normalcy is being restored.
Will be right again.
In a couple weeks with Ghost in the Shell, make sure you watch the 95 version. Don't accidentally watch the 97 or I think maybe 2000 version that's got CGI that I did.
There's a 2017 Scarlett Johansson live action one too.
I did not watch that one, but it got very bad reviews.
Yeah,
neither the critics nor the fans liked it.
Have you seen it, Sean?
No, but I heard it's not worth your time.
Oh, okay. I mean, anything with Scarlett Johansson in it is worth my time.
Yeah.
But if you're just talking strictly about the quality of the movie, I understand the point you're making.
I like her cameos on SNL now more than anything.
Make sure you watch the 95 version. You can do the English dubbed over version, which is what I think all three of us ended up watching.
That's what I watched.
So.
Yeah.
Yes, that is indeed what I watched. It was very good.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Mike's mouth is moving and no words are coming out.
Very weird.
And then all of a sudden, language happens. It's crazy.
Very weird. And we'll see you in that couple weeks for Ghost in the Shell. Until then, stay nerdy, y'all, and cheers.
Cheers.